Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. So we have been talking a lot about RLUSD, XRP, Ripple, what their plan is around RLUSD and XRP, and how XRP actually fits into everything. Now, we're going to go over a few things, but first I actually want to start off with a price prediction, not by anyone around this space, not from an influencer, but actually from a big bank. And this is actually kind of crazy because this is something that, if we go back a few years ago, people would have said there's no way a bank's actually going to give us a price prediction on XRP or any cryptocurrency, in that case. But guess what? We do have it now. And first and foremost, shout out to Moon Lambo. He said, I have to tell you, it is just buck wild to see a multinational bank predict that the price of XRP is going to hit $12.50. This is the type of thing that the XRP community has believed to be possible for over a decade now. Finally, the rest of the world is coming around to our thinking and understanding of the crypto landscape and the XRP ecosystem. And this is the price prediction on coindesk.com. XRP could hit $12.50 before President Trump's term ends, Standard Chartered. And, when we think about this, all right, number one, they said $12.50 by 2028. Now, I think that this is a very conservative outlook from Standard Chartered, which, by the way, is a Ripple partner. And, Ripple actually invested or got an investment from Standard Chartered back in 2016. So, close ties here. We also know that Standard Chartered is still working with Ripple closely on like Ripple custody and things like that. So very interesting to see this. But nonetheless, they do say $12.50 by 2028. I think that it could happen a lot sooner. It really all just depends on how big this space does get this year. But I do think that this is a very conservative outlook, but it is still something interesting to kind of look at because 2028 is not that far off. You got to think about it like this. We have been waiting for the XRP lawsuit to end since December of 2020 when it got announced. And we are coming up on almost 5 years of that lawsuit being around. So if you think about 3 years, what's 3 years when we already waited 5 years for the case to end for a $12.50 XRP? Now, do I think that it's going to take that long? No, like I said. But we have here that the bank said XRP is uniquely positioned at the heart of cross-border payments. XRP is expected to keep pace with Bitcoin in terms of price gains, the report said as well. Now, they did also mention that XRP will reach $5.50 by the end of this year, $8 by 2026, and then $10.40 by the end of 2027, and then $12.50 by the end of 2028. But what's interesting about this is that if that is the case, then that would mean that XRP is going to completely decouple away from traditional stocks, from Bitcoin, and it feels as if we're no longer going to have a bear cycle around crypto. Are they, assuming that we're going into, a utility bull run now, and where all the prices are actually tied back to utility instead of, Bitcoin and cycles? It's a very interesting, outlook because again, most people are actually predicting that 2026 will be the bear market start, which will also be followed by like another 2-3 years of just negative price action. But they're actually telling us, 1040, 2027, 1250, 2028. I think that that's very interesting. But we also have a few quotes here. So number one, XRP is uniquely positioned at the heart of one of the fastest growing use cases for digital assets, facilitation of cross-border and cross-currency payments. XRP Ledger is similar to the main use case for stablecoins such as Tether, blockchain-enabled financial transactions that have traditionally been done through traditional financial TradFi institutions. And it looks as though they have a very bullish outlook on XRP and the XRPL tied back to utility. I feel as if these big institutional players are now starting to tell us that, we are looking at this space moving away from hype and speculation to more utility driven. Very interesting. What do you guys think? Do you think that XRP will hit $12.50 by the end of 2028? Or do you think that it will happen sooner? And do you think some of these other price predictions by Standard Chartered will hold up? Like, for an example, $5.50 by the end of this year, $8 by 2026, $10.40 by the end of 2027. Like, these are very interesting targets by Standard Chartered. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. But nonetheless, when we think about Ripple, right, I do want to focus a little bit on Ripple's overall, infrastructure offering. So number one, we do know that they have cross-border payments tied back to it. This is the original use case for XRP. We've always talked about it in the past. And it feels as though they're kind of shuffling this around now with stablecoins, which will also be settled through the ledger, which means demand of the actual network, which also means demand for the underlying gas token, aka in this case XRP. So it's still very bullish for XRP, even though it is going through something like RLUSD. But on top of that, we also do have the custody solution. Now, this doesn't really have a lot tied back to XRP. More so, what custody does, it actually opens up doors of opportunity for other use cases. In this case, it could be tokenization, digital asset management, stablecoin issuance, and even beyond that. And when we think about that, we mainly look at tokenization because even on Ripple's website under tokenization, they spotlight the XRP ledger because that is the home of anything tokenized from, Ripple. They want to actually have that tokenized future living on the XRP ledger through any of their institutional clients or any, major player that's using, custody, for an example, that they created. But all of this is actually made possible through the entire infrastructure offering that Ripple does offer. But on top of that, you do have the stablecoin initiatives, which, we already know about stablecoins. Stablecoins are going to be the driver for the tokenized future. They're going to be the driver for pretty much anything that we talk about around tokenization, around digital asset adoption, around institutional DeFi use cases in general. This is the bread and butter. Basically, stablecoins are the key to unlocking all of that. But I bring all of this up because I made a post recently and it's, mainly outlining exactly what we're starting to see now with all of the Ripple acquisitions. I think that this is where, we start to really kind of look at these price predictions by these big banks or even price predictions made by influencers over the years. And we start to kind of see them, becoming a reality. I mean, outside of like the, massive exaggerated targets like $30,000, $50,000 and things like that. I still think that some of the lower end price predictions are going to be very realistic, meaning like $10 to $100 for XRP, which a lot of people will say, Nick, you're absolutely crazy. But when we think about what Ripple is building here, it's very interesting. And I did say here that we have heard many top level employees of Ripple tell us what they see Ripple becoming. The infrastructure they are offering is a one-stop shop for any institutional or enterprise player. Currently, their solution offering includes tokenization, custody, payments, stablecoin initiatives, and much more. Their acquisitions are the big key here to watch as they are strategic moves that reinforce their infrastructure. Medico was one of the big moves that set everything into motion. Acquiring Medico didn't just allow them to tap into the custody market, it allowed them to connect with giant banks like HSBC, which is partnered up with Ripple for the XRP Ledger tokenization initiatives, DZ Bank, also very similar state, Deca Bank, Standard Chartered, and many others. Standard custody was the next big puzzle piece, with the regulatory licenses being the big selling point, which was highlighted. They have a trust limited purpose trust charter license approved by the New York Department of Financial Services. This is one of the strictest licenses to acquire and puts Ripple in a completely different playing field. Hidden Road is the icing on the cake, as this is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle. It's not just about the 300 plus institutional players or the $3 trillion moved annually. The focus here is the markets being tapped in, i.e. the FX market, which is a $7.5 trillion per day market. All of this aligns perfectly with the significant stablecoin moves made by Ripple. The entire financial system is moving on-chain, and fiat currencies are already being tokenized. You might be asking, what about XRP? Well, think about the announcements over the last few months, and you will see the big picture. Novati launching an Australian stablecoin on the XRP Ledger. Braza Bank launching a Brazilian stablecoin on the XRP Ledger. Societe Generale launching a Euro stablecoin on the XRP Ledger. Ripple already launched a USD stablecoin on the XRP Ledger. Eventually, every fiat currency in the form of a tokenized stablecoin will be on the XRP Ledger. The original view of XRP becoming the ultimate bridge currency is now a reality. It's only becoming a bigger reality with all of these pieces falling into place. We are ushering into a completely different financial system that will change the entire way the world works. Enjoy the journey. And yes, I strongly believe that this is actually the case because for years and years and years, we're going all the way back to like 2016, Ripple has included in their PDF files a complete breakdown of all of these fiat currencies connecting to one, network or ledger in this case. Now, we know that it's not just about XRP and it's not just about the XRP ledger because, fiat currencies and the fiat, financial system, essentially the FX market, right? it's going to be moved through multiple networks, which is why we look at the multi-chain future. We also look at players like Axeler and even Ondo that do tap in XRP in a big way. But all of this is, becoming a big reality, especially with what Ripple has been doing lately. Now, I do have to give a big shout out to Kryptonrider because he did put out a great post regarding the recent acquisition with Hidden Road, just to kind of put things into perspective around numbers. Because again, we already know about how big the announcement actually is and how big the acquisition is, but we don't actually know the technicals in terms of like the actual magnitude of how big this actually is, which is what he actually did put into perspective here. We have a lot has happened in the last few days, and I feel like people don't really grasp the magnitude of what this means for the XRP ledger. Let's take a look at some numbers and address the topic from my beloved 1% perspective. So status quo. The XRP ledger as it stands now handles around 100 transactions per ledger. If we assume a ledger to continuously close and finalize every 4 seconds, this brings us up to about 25 TPS on average. Status quo. Besides TPS, there is also TVL and dollar volume that can be measured and we could take a look at. Number one is TVL, $52 million, 24-hour USD volume, Claude plus the AMM, $13 million. And then of course, number three, we already know that Ethereum currently owns the biggest piece of the pie. So let's quickly run those numbers as well. TVL, $46 billion. The 24-hour USD volume on the DEX, 3.7 billion. And then, of course, we do have comparing these figures alone gives us a good overview of the gap that we need and, of course, want to close with more activity on the chain. The XRP ledger currently in terms of TVL has about 0.11% the TVL of Ethereum, and also the 24-hour USD volume on the DEX. Of course, XRP ledger has about 0.35% the 24-hour trading volume in dollars of Ethereum. The cake is not a lie. How big is the pie for tokenization? I.e., how much of the pie could we hypothetically grab and increase our TVL on the XRP ledger? Well, Boston Consulting Group states that these numbers are about 0.6 trillion, aka $600 billion. 2030, 9.4 trillion. 2033, 18.9 trillion. Unfortunately, there's a catch. The cake is not a lie. We can't really take these numbers for granted and jump to a conclusion because only 1/7 appears to actually be locked up for DeFi, which is the metric we care about. So what do we get if we crunch these numbers again to get true TVL values for the entire crypto market? Well, today, 86 billion, 2030, 1.3 trillion, 2033, 2.7 trillion. Now what? Now we assume that the 1-to-7 ratio remains and the XRP ledger only captures 1% of this market or entire market to leverage it all in DeFi. How much new capital added to the current XRP ledger TVL are we talking about? Well, by 2030, 1%, 13 billion. TVL increase, 12.9 billion. In percentage though, that is almost a 25,000% increase in TVL. 2033, 1% again, 27 billion. TVL increase, 26.9 billion, or in percentages, a 51,823% gain. Hidden Road. You've probably already read Joel Katz's post on why this new acquisition, which is still subject to regulatory approval, is so huge for the XRP ledger. But what about the numbers? How huge is huge in real numbers? Well, the overview, clearing daily, this is about $10 billion. Clearing yearly, about $3.7 trillion. Transactions daily, 50 million, 24-hour settlement time, 578.7 transactions per second, and each transaction takes about 24 hours to be settled. We didn't even take into perspective the fact that this amount of demand on the XRP ledger would also result in XRP being burned in major clips, which is also a very big deal because, again, that means that the supply is going to be diminished over time. And then, of course, assuming that all clearing volume is settled via the XRP ledger, this would increase the daily dollar volume on chain a lot. Comparison today, about $13 million daily. And then with Hidden Road, this would equal, and this is where the numbers get really significant, over $10 billion. It's 10 billion, 13 million. And then, of course, the increase in percentage is about 76, almost 77,000%. This is 2.7 times more daily volume in dollars than Ethereum. And last but not least, the amount of transactions that the XRP ledger would need to process continuously at any given moment without a break today is about 25 TPS. With Hidden Road, that is about 603.7. The increase in percentages is about 2,315%. So in summary, if the Boston Consulting Group is true, then the XRP Ledger TVL increase by 2030 would be 24,900%. By 2033, it would be 51,823%. And then if Hidden Road plus the XRP Ledger, then we would see that daily volume increase to 77,000% almost. The TPS increase would be 2,315%. Guys, first off, go and give Cryptonwriter a follow for this and go and support him in a big way. When we think about these numbers, this shows us why these acquisitions and what Ripple is doing is extremely significant. Everyone is focused on RLUSD. Oh, RLUSD is going to kill XRP. They're only going to push it through, RLUSD, and it has no impact on the XRP ledger. Guys, the XRP ledger right now is seeing a lot of engagement and a lot of growth. Okay, number one, XRP is still trading over $2 right now, or at least around $2, which is extremely bullish. But at the same exact time, you need to realize that everything that we're seeing right now is still like in process. We haven't even witnessed the scale. We haven't even witnessed the actual use of all of this. This is actually extremely bullish. And 52,000. Guys, when we think about some of these percentages, the TVL increase is what I'm really looking at. 52,000% in 8 years is insane for TVL. We're not talking about price action because, again, this percentage here around TVL and volume around transactions, that will multiply the price. We won't see just a 52,000% increase or anything like that just around the network. No, we look at the price action. All of this will significantly impact the price action of XRP. We don't know what the price of XRP will be at that time, but I do think that a lot of the price predictions from like Standard Chartered, for an example, and even from this community, they could definitely be realized in if we see all of this happen. Now, the big question here is, do we see all of it happen? And is these, are these predictions from like Boston Consulting Group, for an example, accurate? I feel like they are, especially if we're thinking about how many big players are now a part of the tokenization revolution, like BlackRock, Fidelity, Franklin Templeton, Wisdom Tree, etc. I think that some of these numbers are more conservative than realistic, which is, something to be very, very excited about. But with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, leave a like, subscribe, set notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.